welcome to another bad call. The podcast that proves the refs aren't the only ones who get it wrong. With me, as always, are Justin and Nat. What's going on, fellas?
Hey,
Hi.
how we doing?
We should have played rock scissors paper 4 to see who was going to go next.
No, there's no go next. I said, fellas, you can both answer.
I know, but then we both went, all right.
Yeah, that was almost.
It's all good. We are single digits away from NFL broadcast on television. Wow. August 1st is coming soon, which also means that we have some Bears Hard Knocks coming soon, too. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, training camp opened up, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Which, training camp opening up and Hard Knocks coming led us into some contract signings.
Absolutely.
Right? We actually have something to talk about.
We got our boys under ink, Caleb and Rome. I think people were trying to manufacture some drama around Caleb Williams when there really was none to be had.
Clickbait, clickbait, clickbait.
So excited. The reports coming out of camp already are pretty positive from his teammates. Yep. You would have that at this point in camp, but I think the defensive guys are giving him some real props. So and the D seems primed and ready. So
yeah, sounds like that. Go.
I saw a story about Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams rooming together.
Yes.
And Keenan Allen talking about how he struggles to learn the playbook, and so him and Caleb Williams going back and forth and testing each other on plays and whatnot. Like that's something you love to see from a fantasy standpoint. Fantasy football. That means fire up all your shares of Keenan Allen because those are incoming at this point.
We got the hotel narrative.
Yeah, hotel and working it out and all that fun stuff. But it sounds like Eberflus isn't holding back with his defense either. He's throwing it at Williams and saying, "You rise to the challenge or you don't." So
can't ask for any more, dude. I even love the fact that Williams even tried to come up with creative ways to get paid in his contract. Like he wanted to take the team to take a loan out to bypass taxes. I know it sounds a little shady, but at the same time, the fact that he's even willing to test offenses just on contracts means he's testing everything. He's putting everything into everything, and I love it.
The other one be paid as an LLC, right?
Yes,
which the NFL strictly prohibits. It has to be paid directly to the player. It can't be paid to outside business or anything like that.
But it's not crazy though. You had a couple of years ago, guys started taking pay in Bitcoin and stuff like that. Yeah. So, test the water, see what you can get. All they can say is no. If you don't ask, you're not going to find out.
You putting that business degree to work, trying to do everything you can on and off the field. Man, I loved it. The business grad in me just loved that shit.
It's one I've always thought they should use, although it'll never, ever, ever happen. But for somebody to ask for percentage of ownership.
Collective bargaining, I think, keeps that withheld.
But I always thought that'd be a good thing. Like, when I retire, I collect X percentage of ownership. Like, obviously not while you're playing, you can't have it, but when I retire, that kicks in so that for somebody like, Peyton Manning, obviously he didn't finish his career with the Colts, but, had that been the situation where, hey, when I'm going to retire as a Colt, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get X, percentage or, have some sort of stake in the team that way. Right. Because it really gives you that extra incentive to do everything you can for the team because that's where your money's going to be later on.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll get into some talks about some players probably here in our preview that could have gone drastically bad, but after promising starts to careers. However, I just can't see a team doing that because Caleb Williams gets a percentage of ownership and then decides he's got something in his craw and leaves to go play for the Packers or something like that. That would just be devastating.
Well, that's why you have language in there that says that if you end up playing for another team, right?
Yeah, it's like a
Then
startup. It's like
obviously.
a startup. You're
Yeah.
talking like a startup contract deal where if
You got like a
do it-
non-compete clause, right?
Yeah. If you complete year one, you get
No.
X percentage. You complete year two, you get X plus one. But according to a Sporticle.com article, there are several reasons why a player owner isn't possible in today's NFL. First, a player's compensation is limited to the value of his employment contract, and the contract is governed by the collectively bargained NFL player contract. I could go on, but to say
Please
no,
don't.
I do not want to. Besides,
That was already too much.
thing. Oh, I know. Finn, go back to the closet.
We're getting a little too bit in the weeds about the things that don't matter, and we got like Jalen Johnson and DeMarcus Walker saying how this kid's making throws that some veterans can't make, and testing the defense. And then there was some stuff out there today. Keenan Allen talking about Roma Dunze, saying he's faster than I was when I came out. He runs better routes already. Really propping up the rookie.
Yep.
Getting into the research this weekend for this show and training camp start, man. I never want to wish summer away because that means the good weather and the good times are ending. But man, do I love football, and I'm getting pretty pumped up for it.
Oh man, last night I started at about midnight local time and started going through Baltimore, and I put on a soul band I'd never heard of, Australian soul band called the Teskey Brothers. Sam Cooke and Otis Redding had a baby, it would be this lead singer. It's actually fascinating. But I turned it on. I hadn't like been on a computer and headphones just chilling in forever. But I did that, and the Ravens had so much drama going on that I was going deeper and deeper. And I looked up; it was 2:30. That was just 2.5 hours on just Raiders off-season stuff. It was fun. I missed it. I enjoyed it. I hope to get to do it again with the NFC.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and move on because I really sidetracked the crap out of us early here, and I apologize there.
Good job, Finn.
That was not the intention, but we're going to go ahead and get moving on, and we're going to do things a little bit differently this week. Normally, we've got our different segments that we do, starting with our bad call of the week, but we decided this show we're going to do something a little different, a little special. We're going to do an AFC roundup, and then next episode we'll hit the NFC, which I know we're all going to be a little bit more excited about just because home conference, but this is a good place to start. We are each going to take a division and give you a quick little positive, negative rundown of each team in that division and probably a prediction for that division and go from there. And then, like I said, next time we'll swing it around and hit that NFC. But before we do get started on that, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is for the service of your choice. That way you can stay up to date and know when we release new episodes. You can also find us on @anotherbadcall.com where we do occasionally post some written content, some bonus stuff.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, that was part of why
I'm digging into my data now. So
that's why I was making the notes as deep as I was just to kind of have it ready for a post.
Yeah, we'll get into that because Nate wrote a novel for our highlight table. You can also find us on @anotherbadcall. For pretty much most social platforms, or at least the big ones. And with that, what do you say we go ahead and start with? I believe we said we're starting with AFC South, right?
Yeah. Let me
Justin,
kick this off here. AFC South. The division matchups that they've got this year, meaning that each team from the division plays this schedule, so they're going to face off with the AFC East and the NFC North. So I'm just going to run down these teams here in alphabetical order, starting off with the Houston Texans. Made the playoffs last year. They played most of last season without 4 of their 5 projected offensive line, which really hurt their run game. So it'll be interesting because their coach really likes to run the ball. He's a Shanahan disciple and wants to establish the run. They just didn't have much luck with it at all. But that being said, On a positive note, they added Danielle Hunter, edge on defense, and Steph Diggs, wide receiver on offense, to this team that was already on the rise last year. One of the negatives, though, is they are projected to face the 10th hardest QB schedule this coming season, so a little step up in competition. Whereas last season they had the easiest schedule quarterbacks that they faced. So moving on, the Colts, their line win total is 8.5 this year. I think they surprised some teams last year. Performed a little bit better than people thought, especially after Anthony Richardson went down. One thing, the NFL schedule makers this season really didn't do the Colts a favor. They're one of 5 teams that have the worst rest and prep, basically taking into account how many days off your team has versus how many days off the other team has. They have a net rest that ranks 30th in the league, according to Warren Sharp. And let me just sidetrack here. Warren Sharp puts out an NFL preview book that is just absolutely loaded with information. So hat tip to him, because it really made the research a lot easier to do here.
And we are not sponsored in any way, shape, or form.
Yet.
But the guy just does quality work. Anybody in the football space knows he does quality work.
Right. And so the other thing about the Colts, they faced the second toughest schedule of overall D in 2023. And they have a new coach this year, Shane Steichen from Philly. And that leads into my positive note for the Colts. Anthony Richardson is back. And he is a dynamic player who showed some flashes in the short amount of time. He played in 4 games last year, really only started and finished 2 games. He left 2 games early. And despite he not doing that well in accuracy, he's still ranked 11th in EPA per drop back. So, and they added a weapon in Adonai Mitchell for him. Negative note is that for the first 12 weeks of 2024, they faced the 5th hardest schedule. Now, it does turn a bit easier after that, but they're going to be off to a rough start. And Anthony Richardson, he didn't get the reps that he really needed last year. Luckily for him, Shane Steichen worked with Jalen Hurts, similar type running quarterback, so that should be good for him. Now moving to the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have a over-under of 8.5 wins. Big questions of Trevor Lawrence's health. Can he stay healthy? He was banged up a lot last year. And in 23 dropbacks of 3 seconds or more last year, 25% of those ended either sack or an interception. He just was getting banged up, not good when he had time. So a positive note, they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, wide receiver. And they also added Gabe Davis, who has converted 40% of his 55 end zone targets for touchdowns, which is just an outstanding rate. Negative, the offensive line ranked 23rd, and the secondary is ranked 26th. They lose Calvin Ridley. And the other thing is Trevor Lawrence has lost 21 fumbles over the last 3 seasons. No other player has more than 14. And they are also 30th in the league in yards per rush. Lastly, for the AFC South, Tennessee Titans. They've got a Vegas line of 6.5 wins. They've got a new coach, Brian Callahan, coming from Cincinnati. They've got 4 new offensive linemen. And let's see here. The positive note for them is their wide receiver room really does look pretty impressive. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks is pretty nice grouping. They also added Lloyd Cushenberry at center, who is one of the best in the league. And they get to face the only the 30th toughest schedule of past defenses. So this team's really, the Titans have been known as a rushing team. That's my big negative here. They lose Derrick Henry, and their offensive line is ranked. It's really unknown how good they're going to be with so many new offensive linemen. Currently, the experts are ranking them 26th overall, in front of probable quarterback Will Levis. So that's my little rundown here. What do you guys got any thoughts on the AFC South?
I'll let you tap in first now.
I think you're being a little hard on Anthony Richardson for saying he's at the tail end of the league in accuracy on the field since he played like 4 games as a rookie, and he was a rookie. But
that's the statistics.
That's just mean. If he had done like 12 games,
that's not subjective. It's
yeah, I get it, but it was 4 games. I mean, he was as a rookie. He was like he just started. But I like the Colts. I like to see what the Colts are going to end up doing this year. I like to see Anthony Richardson with a full season. I think they're going to beat their Vegas line something fierce. That's what I have so far. JD?
All right, cool. I'm going to do a quick rundown here. First of all, Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson healthy. That's a big thing. We haven't seen that he can actually do it.
Yep.
And that's one of my notes here on the Colts is that if he goes down, so if he doesn't change his play style, he keeps doing what he's doing, because I think his play style is a huge factor in why he got hurt. You know,
that's fair.
I mean,
all fair.
The concussion side of it, the other stuff's kind of freak, but like after Richardson, they signed Joe Flacco, right? So he's your backup. Talk about 2 wildly different QBs, like very different play styles. Granted, I think Steichen's a good coach, and they'll be able to, they got Jim Bob Cooter or whatever is their OC, and I think they'll twist things around to help out. And Flacco proved he can still get it done. But man, talk about 2 different styles. The Texans one's really interesting because Justin, you mentioned, their O-line was just not healthy at all last year. So assuming that they're going to be healthier this year, because you'd have to try pretty hard to be as banged up as they were last year. So they're going to be healthier. And they added Joe Mixon, right? Who's got some talent. So that running game should be better. And now defenses will also have to account for Diggs, because now you got to watch for Stephon Diggs. You got to watch for Nico Collins. You got to watch for Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, and Joe Mixon out of the backfield. It's good. It was a smart move because they're not going to sneak up on anybody this year like they did last year, right? They shocked everybody last year, and that's not going to happen this year. So they made some really good moves. You mentioned Hunter coming over on the edge. That's a great move for their defense. I think they have the best shot to beat their line, their Vegas line at 9.5. I think they've got a better shot than the Colts do to beat theirs.
That's fair.
I don't have a lot on Jacksonville. The loss of Ridley and the addition of Davis, plus you get Brian Thomas, like it makes their receiving core better. But as you mentioned, their run game's not great. So, is their pass game going to get that much better? I don't know.
I feel like overall this division is pretty well balanced as far as like the ceiling for each team. But there's, it's kind of a changing of the guard. It had been Tennessee dominating the division for a while, with the Colts right there a little bit. Houston and Jacksonville bringing up the bottom, but now you've got Houston really rising. Jacksonville, I don't know, kind of remains to be seen. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 10 games. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 5 games.
Right.
It just depends on, can Trevor Lawrence take that next step? We've seen some really nice things out of him, but he's been a bit unsteady.
Honestly, I think he's been, I'm going to say underwhelming, but that's because of all the expectation that came out with him, right? Everybody was waiting for him for years, and it's just kind of been, okay, like what's going on?
And
he was the top of that class, but that class wasn't great. So
right. Well,
He's also a two-time national champion. So I mean, he also had his college performance.
so was Tebow.
Fed into
What
that.
kind of? I mean,
they've gone through
Trevor Lawrence without won 2 titles.
Coaching change also. So within his first 3 years here, so
Yes, he has.
yeah.
The last thing I want to mention really quick before I let you get into your prediction here, and I'll hit you with mine.
Yeah.
Tennessee's the most interesting one to me out of this whole group. You got a second-year QB in Will Levis, first-time head coach in Brian Callahan. But Callahan is used to working with the young QBs, right? And he's got a good group of receivers around him. You mentioned between Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks. We'll see if he can rise up to it. But they also have a really good tight end in Chiggy Okonkwo. And they added Tony Pollard. Not the same banger that they have in Derrick Henry, but you've got Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So you got a decent set of skill positions there. I wouldn't be real surprised to see that team sneak in and win 8 or 9 games this year. If Levis can play just like decent, not great, just decent.
Well, and their strength of schedules, it'll give them better chances.
It's interesting. I can't place the stat, but he likes to chuck the ball down the field quite a bit.
Callahan or Levis?
Levis.
Yeah,
He
he eats peels off his, he eats bananas with peels and mayo in his coffee.
Yeah,
He's not there to dink and dunk.
He definitely is a little bit of a different character, and this team is going to have a different identity from what they've had for the past 8 years or whatever with Derrick Henry. So
you saw what Callahan did with his I can't think of his name now. Jake Browning? Is that Jake Browning who was the backup for Cincinnati last year?
I believe so.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, my AFC South prediction is Nico Collins. He is currently ranked by fantasy analysts at ESPN as wide receiver 15th and at Yahoo at 16th in PPR formats. And my prediction is that Nico Collins is going to fall outside of the top 24 this year. I'm seeing Diggs coming in and taking some of that possession receivership. I'm seeing a little bit of pass game regression just because, like JD said, they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Nope. And their run game, if their offensive line can stay healthy, is going to be improved, which will let them control the ball a bit more. Like I said, their coach is a Kyle Shanahan disciple. He wants to establish a run. They had like the second most runs on first down of any team. It just wasn't successful last year. If they can be successful with the run, it's just a little bit of passing game. Not that the passing game is going to be bad. It's just that it's going to be regress from the home runs that they were doing. And so that's my prediction.
All right. I don't like it because I've got shares of Nico Collins all over my dynasty prospect. But your reasoning, you can't argue with the reasoning. And I'm just going to go with my prediction. I would not be surprised if the Titans make it to 8 wins this season. Nat, you got one, or you?
Yeah, mine was
hide?
No, mine was similar to tuck tail and hide. I'm already 2,300 miles away. No, mine was similar to Justin's, but I thought it was going to be C.J. Stroud was going to have a sophomore slump. I don't know if it was going to be a full season, but just the way he broke out, defenses are going to be gearing a lot more for him than they did last year. So I thought it would start off slow and maybe he'd pick it back up next year. Not saying he's not going to have a great career, but it's that sophomore slump like I watched too much in baseball that I thought was going to happen, and that was my guess.
I'm gonna send you a Mina Kimes show episode where they talk about that, how teams figured out he went on a little slump last year and they figured out how to defend against him, and he fixed it and got better.
All right, I'll take it.
All right, and with that, it's AFC North time.
Sweet, the AFC Ohio division. I put this in order of the way I wrote them down, so I started with Baltimore. 2023, they start 13-4, NFC North champions, number 1 seed in the NFC Conference playoffs. Only 3-3 division record, though. Week 18, they kind of rested all their starters against Pittsburgh, so it shouldn't count. Their defense they were the first defense in NFL history to lead the league in turnovers, sacks, and fewest points allowed. And the division, it starts and ends with them. The division is going to fall with Baltimore, or it's going to rise and fall with what Baltimore does. Their draft picks, their first pick, they had Nate Wiggins out of Clemens, a quarterback. And the 30th pick, they got Roger Rosengarten out of Washington, the tackle, to fill up some of those line issues. And in the 3rd round, pick 93, they got Adijah Isaac out of Pennsylvania, the edge rusher. Going in this season, they've had changes. They've had a lot of losses. It comes with being a great team and are having a great record, and teams or players performing well, getting opportunities. Their biggest one is probably the loss of their defensive coordinator. Name. I had it in my head until 2 seconds ago. Mike McDonald. He ended up being the head coach over at Seattle. He's right in my backyard. I couldn't remember his name. He was replaced with 32-year-old Zach Orr, who is a product of the system. And that's going to be the theme with Baltimore. It's going to be next man up. Their offensive line is just thrashed. They've lost both their guards and their starting right tackle. They're replacing them with a competition of young guys. And Josh Jones out of Texas, who they signed as a tackle. And Rosengarten decided to take the right tackle spot. They also have concerns at the left tackle with Ronnie Stanley and his injury history with shoulder, ankle, and knee over the last few years. So their defense is still solid. They picked up Patrick Queen, they lost Patrick Queen, Geno Stone, and Jadeveon Clowney. They replaced them with Trenton Simpson, Eddie Jackson, and Tavius Robinson. And it's nothing. And going to my positive and negative points. Their positive point for them is picking up Derrick Henry. He's 30 years old. He still has a lot in the tank. He's probably going to get 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. Their biggest biggest negatives are that O-line, as I talked about. My prediction for them is they're probably going to have a step back this year. They're definitely not going to be 13-4. If they're over 500, I'd be impressed. They have a terrible start to the record. Their first 4 games of the season are just brutal. So I don't with that and having to rehab and trying to get a line back together, they're going to go off to a slow start. So I don't think they're going to win. I think it's actually going to winning this division is probably going to be Pittsburgh, if I had to guess. They were 10-7 despite only having 13 passing touchdowns. They earned the wild card in week 18, lost in the wild card, Buffalo 17-31. They did have a 5-1 division record. Once again, that week 18, Baltimore rested their starters, but the fact that they went 5-1 with that 10-7 record is impressive. Solid draft class, kept most of the team together. The fact that they only paid like $1.2 million for Russell Wilson and they got Justin Fields for his number 15 draft pick deal for one more year is impressive. And they got 10-7 with Pickett and whatever the hell that other guy's name is. But I mean, you're talking, they don't need Seattle Russell Wilson. Even his last year in Denver, Russell Wilson was good. If he can be a team manager, Pittsburgh's going to be looking at 12 wins easy, in my estimation. I like where they're at. They do have some distractions, but I like where they're at. Brings me to Cincinnati. it rises and falls with Joe Burrow. If he's healthy, they're going to be better than the 9-8. But if he's injured again, they're going to have issues again. Otherwise, I didn't stick too much on them. They had some losses, they had some pickups, but it's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow. Brings me to Cleveland. Cleveland had 11-6 record, 3-3 in the division. They secured the wild card in week 18, but they lost to Houston, something fierce, very ugly. They had a nice draft, picking up defensive tackle and a guard in round second and third. No significant D-line change or coaching changes, but they come around. Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubbs. Deshaun Watson, if he's healthy, maybe he has a decent year, but he hasn't had a Deshaun Watson year since 2020. Nick Chubbs, according to 4 days ago on July 18th, he is behind. He's injury recovery. He's recovering slowly on his injury. So, and they lost Joe Flacco. They still have probably the best defense in the NFL, and they have that mostly all together. But I mean, what are you going to do if Chubbs can't get healthy, and Deshaun Watson can't do anything better than he did last year? They're going to have the same. They're going to be right where they were last year. My prediction for the year, I think Pittsburgh wins the division. Ravens have the second half of the season, and the other two Ohio teams flounder around. That's my take. Was that short enough for you?
Holy word vomit, Batman.
Jeez Louise, what the heck?
What's up?
I'm typing in my script as a response. Holy word vomit, Batman. So much for the quick hitter on this. Wowzers.
I was faster than Justin was.
Wowzers.
I can do it again if you want. We can record it.
Oh, jeez, oh, Pete. All right, Justin. I'm gonna go real quick because I know I've got the next division, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'll leave some of it for you. I'm gonna leave some meat on the bone. I'm not gonna touch his predictions, so I'll leave some meat on the bone. Baltimore. We'll just go real quick. That running game is something to be feared. They have themselves a legit number one running back to go with Lamar now. Yikes.
Yep.
Yikes. You want to talk about thunder and lightning? You got it right there. Usually it's two running backs, but now it's your running back and your QB / running back. Anyway, as far as Cincinnati goes, I'm curious to see how their offense is going to gel because you have a disgruntled wide receiver in T. Higgins.
Yep.
Chase is looking to get paid, and you have a new OC. Now, granted, Zach Taylor as your head coach is essentially your offensive coordinator too, but they've got a new OC, and I believe Dan Pitcher. So I'll be really curious to see what happens there. Cleveland is really simple. Can Watson find it again? Right? Stefanski does a really good job of making sure his team's ready to go. Flacco carried them, just flat out carried them. If Watson can give them half that, they'll be really interesting because, as you mentioned, the defense is good. You don't have to do a whole lot. Not a ton you have to do there. Pittsburgh. Yeah, there's a QB upgrade because the bar was so low. Ridiculously low. But I'll go ahead and give you my prediction for this, and it's not a wins or nothing. Arthur Smith is going to frustrate the shit out of everybody in Pittsburgh because he has got to be one of the most confusing people to run an offense that doesn't have Derrick Henry. Right? In Tennessee, it was run Derrick Henry, run Derrick Henry, run Derrick Henry. You get to Atlanta, and he had all these things, and he went, I'm going to use none of my Ferraris and just see what happens. So my frustration, or that's my prediction, is Arthur Smith's going to frustrate the shit out of Steelers fans.
Yeah.
All right, Justin.
Yeah. So I wasn't trying to shut you down. I was just saying we don't need every offseason transaction in and off of each squad. Let's start with Cincinnati. I agree. They, for a team that was showing so much promise, they've lost their offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Burrow has had some injuries. They've lost their third veteran wide receiver in Tyler Boyd. You mentioned it. T. Higgins is disgruntled. I just was reading an hour before we were recording. The Cincinnati owner said there's no time to talk about a Jamar Chase contract extension during the season. Well, we're not in the season, first of all, and second of all, off season's been pretty long. So it sounds like they're starting to squeeze the nickels there in Cincinnati, which is strange. But that organization has been strange for a long time.
Well, and it's odd because they're sitting at almost $22 million in cap space. So you think they could find a few pennies to pay him?
Yeah, Cleveland. I just think they're going to be in hell because they made that deal for Deshaun Watson. If Nick Chubb can come back and be healthy, that's great. I mean, he squatting on Twitter
500
over 500 pounds.
500 pounds, yeah.
The guy is a freak.
The fact that he's walking is.
I know. Yeah, that was a nasty injury that I don't ever want to watch the replay of again.
And it's the same knee he blew out in college too. So now
Right.
there's a pattern started.
And it's Nick.
Can we stop?
Nick Chubb. Chubb. It's not plural. It's not plural.
Depends on how good that blue pill's working, I guess. Anyway,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh. We're gonna have to agree to disagree because I think Pittsburgh sucks. I think that it was a terrible move to bring in both of these quarterbacks together. I wouldn't be surprised if they're playing the flip-flop game back and forth all year long. Arthur Smith is a lunatic. He just, I don't think that's an upgrade for Pittsburgh whatsoever. Obviously, their coach, he's been there a long time and he doesn't have any losing seasons. So, I'll leave it to him to go for it and see if he can figure it out. But I really wouldn't be surprised if this is the first time they have a losing season.
Go. Sorry, go.
I was just saying, my prediction is about the Baltimore Ravens, and I think that with the addition of Derrick Henry to Lamar Jackson, they've got Mark Andrews, they've got another year with their young receivers under their belt, and the NFL did the Ravens a huge favor, and they've got the number one rest edge plus 16 days built into their schedule. It's the number one largest net rest age in history. So they're set up to succeed. My prediction is that the Baltimore Ravens win the AFC.
All right. Here's why I like both the Ravens and the Steelers. You could flip a coin who actually probably wins that division, but I think they're both making it to the playoffs. They've got so much culture between those two teams. Like literally Baltimore, you're still talking about Baltimore winning the division. Baltimore is pretty much going to have to rebuild 80% of that front line, and they're doing it with next man up. So, I mean, with guys who've had very little snaps or rookies, and the fact that you're still thinking they're going to win is just a testament to how great and stiff that culture is, both in Baltimore and Pittsburgh. The same thing. I mean, they hire internal. They grow them, they mature them, they bring them from within. And that's why I think both of those teams are going to end up being all right. And I honestly, if you throw like a Russell Wilson in like a Jacksonville or something that's young and there's building, or with a young culture, it'd be fucking terrible. But throwing him in an established culture like Pittsburgh, he doesn't have, like I said, he doesn't have to be Seattle. He just needs to manage the ball a little bit. And if not, Justin Fields might be right there behind him. But economically speaking, they're going to at least try to get a full year, I think, out of Wilson, because they don't want to sit there and pay Justin Fields $22 million or 21 and change, or whatever his option is for next year. So I think they're going to try to keep it under 50% so they can renegotiate that deal with him. But if he could just be stable, he doesn't have to be. If he could stay off fucking TikTok and just be stable, then Pittsburgh and Baltimore are going to have a nice clash this year.
How are your hamstrings after backpedaling like that? Because a few minutes ago, it was Steelers were 12 plus wins, winning the division.
Well, no, I still think they could do both. Like, I still think they could do a 12 plus. I still think Baltimore takes a step back, but I think they can do a second half of the season and still get in.
here's the thing: winning 13 games is hard.
Yes, it is.
It's hard in today's NFL,
and they did it in 16 because they gave up that last game. They gave up that last game.
If a step back is 12 wins, that's still 12 wins.
Well, my guess is it's going to be like 10.
Pittsburgh, as of late, is just let's be right about 500, just above 500, sneak into the playoffs, and then go home.
Yeah.
So, while they've been a stable organization, they've also been steady since Big Ben, not when he retired, but as he declined
his
towards
last couple,
the end.
his last couple
seasons,
same
thing. So, all right. Either of you have any final thoughts on?
Oh, let's see in my novel notes.
Mountain Boy's internet dropped or something, so we had to kick back at it.
Damn left coast.
Damn left coast.
He stopped peddling and the internet dropped, so we're gonna go again. We got him a Gatorade, also not sponsored. Figure that out. Yeah. All right, here we were. I was starting in with the AFC East and talking about the Buffalo Bills. The big positive for me with them is that they retained their offensive tackle Deion Dawkins and then signed La'el Collins. I always think it's good to solidify your offensive line, especially when you got a talented QB like Josh Allen. On the flip side of that, though, they didn't really give him any talent. They shipped off Stephon Diggs. They lost Gabe Davis and didn't really replace any of them with anybody else. They brought in drafted Keon Coleman, who, while very entertaining, to ask him to make up for the talent loss of Diggs and Davis is really asking a lot. Probably going to be seeing a lot of Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. That's my suspicion anyway for the Bills, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, the Chiefs do it with Travis Kelce, so why not? Moving on to the Dolphins. For them, most of their offensive starters are returning. They extended Jalen Waddle. They signed Kendall Fuller on the defensive side of the ball, which is a great signing. So their offense stays pretty much the same. The problem is their defense took a huge hit. They lose Christian Wilkins. They lose Van Ginkel. And then a couple of other key players. And this one's got to hurt a little bit. They signed Shaq Barrett, and then he retires. Yikes. So really hurting on that defensive side of the ball. For a team that was so riddled with injuries on the defensive side down the stretch last year, to just have more loss on that side of the ball, it's got to be really frustrating. Because you can only run track for so long before you get tired, and you got to stop the other team. The Patriots, one of my three teams that my kids are not allowed to cheer for. Mac Jones is gone. That's a positive. We think it's Drake May season, or is it? Because you've got Jacoby Brissett. Do they start Brissett and let May sit? Or do they just use Brissett as a backup? We'll see. The other thing, I think they had a nice addition of Antonio Gibson to the running back group. I think it gives a nice pairing there with Ramondre that you didn't really have because Zeke is gone now. Negative side of it, I dare either one of you, without looking at the Notion template, to name 3 Patriots receivers. Justin, you might be able to do it. Nat, I doubt it. I doubt it.
Juju. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah,
that's all
that is about it, right?
I'd have gotten 2.
You have Juju, you have Kendrick Bourne, you have Demario Douglas, and they signed KJ Osborne coming over from the Vikings. And then you've got 2 rookies in Polk and Baker. So you want to talk about an unproven receiving group. Yikes. That's part of why I'm wondering if they start Brissett. Just because it's going to be a rough year for them. The Vegas line is 4.5. It might be the under on that one. It might be the under. The Jets. So they signed tackles Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. They drafted a tackle in Olu Fashanu. Again, solidify that offensive line. You assume that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back healthy. Protect. If you give him a little bit of time, if he's 75% of himself, he's proven how dangerous he can be. And then they signed Mike Williams, which is a get him another receiver for half the season. And then this one I think is underrated. They signed Tyrod Taylor as the backup. So for me, if something happens to Rodgers, he's not ready to go, or something happens, Taylor's a perfectly serviceable QB, which is something they haven't had in years. So I think that's probably one of their best moves. And in a negative move, Nathaniel Hackett's still their offensive coordinator. And I'm really trying to figure this out, because so far what I've seen out of Hackett and out of Getsy, both former coordinators or, play call coordinators, whatever you want to call them, for Rodgers, neither one of them have had any success outside of Rodgers being their QB. So I'm trying to understand how either one of them have jobs still in the NFL. I should as coordinators. So now I'm going to say all that, and then my prediction's going to kind of counteract it a little bit. But I can't figure that one out. But I think they made some really good moves on the personnel side. Did not do a good job in the coaching staff. Justin, since you've got another AFC division to go through, I'll let you go ahead and comment, and then we'll throw it over to Nat.
Okay. Yeah, Patriots suck. I think they're going to keep sucking. I think the Dolphins, while they have an exciting offense, I'm not sure they can all stay healthy, be it the quarterback, the receivers, whatnot. This team just doesn't seem to have the maturity to hold it all together. I would predict them in third place in the division, and then the Bills. Interesting what they've done this offseason. Like, McDermott. Yeah, I get the coach wrong there.
Yes, Sean McDermott. Yep.
Yeah, he likes the run. He likes to establish the run. I don't think he's as big on the passing. They are really taking the Kansas City model. I think you touched on that a little bit. They've got a couple of good tight ends. They've got Josh Allen who can run the ball, and they have a pretty decent defense. So that being said, I think that the Jets win this division. My prediction in this is that Garrett Wilson ends as a top 5 receiver this year in fantasy scoring, and Aaron Rodgers exceeds 4,000 yards passing. I want to puke saying that, but that's just I think, as much as I can't stand the guy, he's talented and he's proven it over and over. So I think he's not going to blow out his Achilles on the first play of the season. Can't be that lucky.
God, I hope you just jinxed that.
No, man, we don't wish for people to get hurt. Like
Rodgers.
Don't care. Like you can wish for him to be muted on public radio or whatever, or, ESPN broadcast, but
I did listen. I did listen to his interview on Pardon My Take with Big Cat today, and he said he could have played in a circle, kind of as he did when his calf was torn up with the Packers, if they were in it, but they weren't, so it wasn't worth the risk. So I expect him to be back and healthy this year.
Yeah. All right, now, aside from wishing injuries upon players, what else you got?
Buffalo Bills. Is it really a negative to lose Stephon Diggs? I know production-wise, sure, but from a culture standpoint, he was reportedly a cancer. That might be a case of addition by subtraction. Bills probably take the division. Miami, it's amazing. JD talked so much about O-line strength and structure, and we talked about losing starters, but somehow the name Connor Williams didn't come up. And so, no, it wasn't the most important point. But with all our talk about Connor Williams, going, oh man, just name drop him once. That's all I cared about.
I bet he was hurt for a portion of the season.
Yeah,
so
I know,
but they retained his replacement.
Yeah, it's what, but so yeah, no, I thought it was kind of like adorable. It's like, oh, it would have been nice just to hear his name. I still dream of him coming to Chicago.
Do you want me to drop a name to make you feel better?
Yes.
The Bills also signed Mitch Trubisky again. Does that make you feel better?
No, I still got double
All
dunk
right,
in my head. Yeah, New England Patriots. Y'all ever see the old sci-fi movie Logan's Run? Probably not. Futuristic society, cut to the chase. They come up with an elaborate way to kill off anyone who's 30 and older. It's about what New England needs to do in a cutting standpoint. You've got rookie receiver, young receivers, Drake May, anyone who's over 30 on that team, just get rid of them and reboot. Just start over. And with the Jets, man, if Rodgers isn't out smoking peyote half the season and Mike Williams can stay healthy, they're least competitive. Otherwise, the Jets are the Jets and will always be the Jets at this point. So Bills take it. Jets maybe get in the playoffs, but probably not. That's my thought.
All right. Well, my prediction is not going to be that out there now because my prediction was that the Jets are making the playoffs. I didn't go as far to say that they're going to win the division. I do believe that they 100% have the capability of doing that. With a healthy Rodgers, I think with Tyrod at it, they can be competitive, but it's going to be a struggle. But with Rodgers, I really believe that they can win that division. As you said, Justin, they just have some really good skill position players on both sides of the ball too. Like, I mean, you got a good, young, fierce defense, and you've got, like you said, potentially a top 5 receiver. You got potentially a top 5, potentially a number 1 running back in Breece Hall. And if you can have a QB that can actually get the ball to them, you got an exciting player in Xavier Gibson too. Kick return, punt return, the new kick return rules, like that. A lot of stuff going on for that team. They're pointing in a good direction. Maybe just get a new offensive coordinator. But so that's
isn't Rodgers their de facto coordinator when he's on the field?
Well, right. He's going to see if he can get Hackett another job after he retires.
When he's lucid.
All right, you were raising your hand. What do you got?
Yeah. Question for you guys. Do you think Jets can still make the playoffs if Tyrod Taylor does most of the wins? And it's not because I'm wishing ill will on Aaron Rodgers so much as he's just so much as he's 40 and could be smoking peyote next week.
Now, listen, Jets.
He is smoking peyote on a weekly basis, but he's been doing that, and he's a Hall of Fame quarterback who's
40.
Still got Tom Brady won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. The Jets have won 7 games the last 2 years with terrible QB play. You give them average QB play and just let that running game and defense do its job. I mean, to your point with Cleveland, like you just need average.
Pittsburgh,
and they're right there. They're right there. So,
do you think Tyrod can give them average?
Out 100%. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, as long as he keeps, he's just got to keep doctors away from him. I think isn't Tyrod the Chargers QB that took the needle puncture so Herbert could?
Yeah.
That guy's just got bad luck. It seems like so. If he can stay healthy, because I don't know. I'd have to look and see who's there. Yeah, guys I've never heard of after that. So
I said, who's after? Who are they even going through?
Any team that gets to their third quarterback is in trouble. So
right. All right.
Yep.
We got one division left, and it's an interesting one. So let's see what you got there, Justin.
AFC West divisional matchups against the AFC North and the NFC South this year. Kicking it off with the Denver Broncos. Vegas line of 5.5 wins, and before I even get too far into it, I'd be surprised if they sniffed half of that. They're coming off an 8-9 season. This team is in shambles solely because of the Russell Wilson trade. They gave up 3 players, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick. They've got almost $70 million in dead cap space. So my one positive note, I've really, really struggled to come up with a positive note for the Broncos. I'm thinking they're going to be vying for the first overall pick. That's how bad I think they're going to be. So I said this is probably a low pressure season for development, and or possibly a planned tank to try to recover from that trade, and maybe a healthy Javonte Williams being in his second year removed from that knee injury. On the negative, they're choosing between Zach Wilson and or Bo Nix at the quarterback. They lost Jerry Judy. They've got a terrible defense, and I could go on and on, but that's about as good as you can say about the Broncos. Up next, we have the Chiefs, reigning Super Bowl champs, back to back. They come into this season again. No, I take that back. Last season, they won the championship despite having the third worst rest edge in the schedule. The schedule makers did not do them any good last year. It's not quite as bad this year. Positive notes for them: they added Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. He's the fastest receiver ever out of the combine. But little fact is he's more of a yak machine than he is big home run down the field threat. Texas really like to give him the ball and just let him go. Kind of like a guy that Kansas City used to have. And this actually falls within their strategy because Kansas City threw the shortest pass routes on first down in the entire league in 2023. Negative note, Rashee Rice, their receiver who was looking good last year, he's had a lot of off-the-field issues. He's got a potential suspension coming. And with all the attention on the offensive side of the ball, can the defense sustain to keep them in games? Also bad, Travis Kelce's new mustache. Sorry. And next we move on to the Raiders. They've got an over-under total of 6.5. Antonio Pierce comes. He took over the team last year after they fired McDaniels, and he got himself hired. They're choosing between Aiden O'Connell and Minshew Magic. Warren Sharp's experts rank them as the 32nd worst QB unit, and this is one team in the rankings by experts that have multiple areas that are ranked last. I think the other team is the Giants, but they're ranked last in the quarterback and the head coach category. Positive for the Raiders is their tight end depth. They've gone back-to-back drafts with Matthew Mayer and now Brock Bowers, who one of my favorite guys coming out of this draft. He's a stud. One of the negatives is the loss of Josh Jacobs. I think this is a huge, huge loss for them. He was a stud, and they're filled in with Zamir White and Alex Madison. So I just don't think they've done enough to keep that position. And if the Raiders start out slow, will Devontae Adams try to push his way out of there? His clock is ticking on his career, so he wants to get some wins. Lastly, in this division, we've got the LA Chargers. It's really hard for me not to say San Diego. And we all know the big news of this offseason is Jim Harbaugh coming back to the NFL. This team has kind of done a major overhaul. Harbaugh's big on the run. He's big on doing that. So the positive note is with a ground and pound strategy and a playmaker, Justin Herbert at quarterback, they should be able to keep games fairly close just with Harbaugh's experience and that kind of strategy. Negatives, they lost a lot when it comes to weapons. Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. The question really begs, who's going to catch the ball? So that's my preview of the division. Nat, what do you got? What are you thinking about? I know you were a little disappointed when I chose to be the one to preview the AFC West, but so I assume you've got some thoughts on.
Yeah,
on
as
that
the one who lives in the AFC West and sees way too many Broncos and Raiders and Packer jerseys.
I don't think any of those teams are in the Pacific.
Aren't you closer
Northwest.
to NFC West?
Seattle's the closest. The second closest would
right.
be second closest would be.
You can have an NFC West next week.
Yeah, but yeah, AFC actually you still get Raiders jerseys because of the Oakland Days, and you get Denver and Packers because of the cheese mafia. But starting with Denver, no, I don't hold much hope for them. They're paying Russell Wilson almost $38 million to not be on their team. So I mean that hamstrung them. I want to see them just go ahead and just put Bo Nix out there day one and pretty much start all over. I don't have much hope. Kansas City. I mean, it's the reason Justin won the AFC West and fought to be able to pursue him. I mean, they're going to be they're going to be a contender. Not much more you got to say about them. The Vegas Raiders, they can stay in Vegas and rot in hell as they continue to suck, and that doesn't bother me. Though Brock Bowers, you're right. Brock Bowers, if he had gone with the Bears in the draft, would have been cool. I get concerns about the Los Angeles Chargers as much as I get concerned about any Los Angeles team. But Harbaugh, on paper and with press, all looks like a good hiring. Michigan's under sanctions, and his last couple of years in San Francisco were not anything to write home about. Someone who actually lived in San Francisco and had to hear the media all day. I don't know if he can adapt to the way the game has changed in the last few years. And so, I mean, his first pick was Joe Alt. You had Malik Neighbors and Roma Dunze on the board and a chance to give Herbert some weapons to go with him as all those weapons are going out the door. And he went after Joe Alt. And while Joe Alt's a man, just a corn-fed mule, I don't even see them getting 8.5. It might take them 2 seasons to get 8.5. That's my prediction.
I'll give you credit for this. You dropped some bold predictions. Steelers with 12 and taking Chargers 2 years to hit 8.5. Wow. All right. Well, we're going to call this counterpoints here. So, Justin, you mentioned a healthy Javonte Williams, which I'm excited to see, hopefully healthy. I saw an interesting thing that there's a possibility that him or Samaje Perine, like the two of them, are fighting for a roster spot.
That's ridiculous. Unless they're trying to tank.
Right. Which is possible. The other side of it, they lose Jerry Jeudy. I posed this challenge with the Patriots. I'll pose it again here. Can you name, without looking it up, 3 Broncos receivers?
Cortland Sutton.
No, I couldn't think of his name. I was going Sutherland.
Justin, you have the advantage because you play fantasy football, but it's still rough. It's still rough.
Is Alex O still? No, he's not there anymore.
Oh, they recycled them so bad in the last year and a half, too.
Yeah. So you're proving my point here. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Josh Reynolds signed there.
Josh Reynolds signed there. They have Marvin Mims. They have Tim Patrick still, right? But
part of it is a lot of those guys got hurt last year, so they weren't relevant throughout the entire season.
Right. My suspicion is they're not going to be that relevant. And speaking of irrelevant, you also mentioned between Zach Wilson and Bo Nix. I believe it's actually between Bo Nix and Jared Stidham at this point in time. I don't even think Zach Wilson is in the conversation for number 1. But either way, it doesn't really matter. Like, and that just speaks to how bad it is that it pick one of your 3. My suspicion is that it'll be Nix because they're going to want to get him as much experience as possible if they can get him out there without dying. KC, is this a year where the offense pivots away from Kelsey? is this finally the year you theoretically have two decent receivers? I'm not counting Rashee Rice because who knows what's going to happen with that. But you mentioned it in Worthy and Hollywood Brown. I'm not saying Kelsey's not going to be a part of the offense. I'm just saying he's not going to be the sole focal point. You're going to see a lot more Brown, more Worthy, and you're going to see a lot more Pacheco.
Yeah, no, they take pressure off of Kelsey. You know, I think that's part of it, and in turn take some pressure off of Mahomes. You know, giving him more outlets.
Right, 100%, and it's Andy Reid, right? So know how to use your weapons. And again, Kelsey can still get it done, but he's getting up there. My suspicion is this is the last year, regardless. Especially if they do go 3 in a row, but this is his last year regardless. That's my suspicion.
Mr. Swift, he's a budding media star. He's one of my favorite non-Bear players ever. The dude is just completely performs, and he has fun with the game, and he's fun to root for. And
he's like a less Freddie Gronk.
Know, yeah. Well, I don't know.
Unless he's still got some frat to him. Yeah. But Gronk is like, if you look up frat boy, like that's what shows up.
Right. Yeah. So they've got
State. Can you say State College?
Kansas City has been my adopted AFC team, especially ever since they drafted Patrick Mahomes. When the Bears passed on him, I've loved him. I love Andy Reid. He's my favorite coach in the league. He's just so chill, and he knows how to press all the right buttons. I don't think they get the third one, although with this division they're going to get 6 wins easy. Then start looking outside. They're going to win their division. They're going to be in. I made the prediction of Baltimore winning the AFC, so I can't also predict the Chiefs to win it.
Right.
But nobody would be surprised.
I mean, you can.
So I'm gonna keep moving down here. Las Vegas, they added a tight end, but can O'Connell be the guy? Like you mentioned, Minshew's there if O'Connell's failing, but Minshew, again, the magic lasts 4 weeks, whatever. You mentioned something about forcing Adams out, and I've seen rumors of a possible Adams for Ayuk trade, which if you're Adams, yes, please go to a contender, finish out, right? If you're Ayuk, you get out. But is that the way you want to get out? I don't know. And moving on to my adopted AFC team. My AFC team that I've really enjoyed for a long time is the Chargers. I think it's because I'm a glutton for punishment, just with all the teams that I root for. So I just found one that was always going to struggle. This one's interesting for me because Nat, you were saying why not get receiver help because you lost all this talent. But one of their biggest problems for years has been having a healthy line going all the way back to Phillip Rivers. So making sure that you can solidify that line with your young superstar QB, that's great. My bigger concern, as far like outside of the wide receiver stuff, which I'll touch base in a second, is you bring in Greg Williams again. Right? Or no, Roman. Sorry. Greg Roman. That's the word I was looking for. Is he going to be able to maximize Herbert? And that's my bigger concern is that he's not going to be able to utilize because he's a completely different QB than what Lamar was, right? And that's really where Roman had a lot of his success was just letting Lamar run all over the place and just using their run game. Now, speaking of using that run game, they bring over Gus Edwards. They bring over J.K. Dobbins, who is also coming off an Achilles injury and a bad knee injury, and see if he can recover. So, are they just going to try to bring that Ravens run the ball mentality and then not really use the superstar QB you have, that's my bigger concern. The wide receiver thing, this is interesting to me because they drafted Quentin Johnson last year, and it came out that he's not included as in the top 3 receivers for their 11 personnel. So I'm trying to remember who it was, but I'm looking at it right now. Sorry. Josh Palmer.
Josh Palmer. Yeah.
That one I knew. It was the Lad McConkey that I couldn't remember, and then DJ Chark. So it's almost because of the lack of the receiver group and who they brought in as their OC in Roman. I'm really curious to see how they use Herbert. So that team has always been right there. They've got a solid defense. They've always been right there where it's like you can see them knocking on the door, but they can never seem to push it open. I'll be curious to see if Harbaugh can be the motivator that he supposedly is and make that happen. Because second place in this division is very much in play. Very much in play. Because you don't have to do anything other than show up for a couple of games.
Can you be 500 and be in second place? That's the question.
Well,
I'd answer your question, but you talked away from the mic for half of it, so I'm not really sure what you said.
I was gonna say I don't think you have to be. I'll make it into an answer. I don't think you have to be 500 to be second place in this division. Like I think Justin said the same thing.
That leads into my AFC West prediction is that this division has 3 teams with six wins or fewer. I think they're going in the wrong direction. A lot of these teams, other than the Chiefs, so they're just bad.
Yeah, the thing is that's really not that far out there. You know, I posted, I sent you guys that picture of the data stuff I was playing with, and I'm looking at the win totals across the last 5 years for these teams. Denver has not won more than 8 games in the last 5 years, right? Sorry, not total, but like in each of the seasons. The Chargers went 5, 7, 9, 10, and 5. The Raiders 7, 8, 10, 6, 8. Like it's just not there. It's really easy for them to see, okay, we can get to 6 or fewer, right?
It's just when they all have to play each other.
If you can get 3 in your own division,
it's hard to say that they're gonna get more than
Yeah,
it would be quite the accomplishment to have 3 teams at 6 or fewer.
I will say this, even though those records are what they are, some of the most entertaining games to watch are those divisional games.
It's just their style of play.
They play each other very tough no matter who they are.
Yep.
I mean, Denver and KC, like 2 teams that you would think that's a walk in the park. Denver wins one. Like, it's tough. Raiders, Chargers. I mean, you remember the game, 2 seasons ago that went overtime, whatever it was. They just kept going back and forth the entire time. So they just play each other tough. So, all right. Well, that was our AFC roundup. With some little technical hiccups in there, but we made it through.
My bad.
I'm really looking forward to next week's or next recordings. This, depending on when we do this, hitting at the NFC and everybody getting to talk NFC North. We get to bring Bear Talk back. We'll have some training camp stuff. So, how about you guys? How are we feeling about this one?
It was fun to really dig in and kind of start. Getting back into like digging into these teams, remembering who moved where, or whatnot. It spurred me to join 2 of the $20 millionaire best ball drafts on DraftKings.
There it is.
So I've got those going. I'm on a slow draft on them, so I didn't want to sit down and like have to think every 30 seconds. So it's every 8 hours, but it's fun. Have a couple of those teams and really start getting ready for fantasy season and the actual NFL season with the Bears, making me, overly optimistic. But it'll be good to do the NFC next week.
Yeah, absolutely. But sticking on the AFC, JD's analysis just had me kind of thinking about Kansas City, like almost reminiscing because of their dynasty of dominance so far. And so I don't know if I want to see it end. I don't know. There's some dynasties you just want them to die as soon as you can, and then there's some dynasties you just kind of enjoy the ride. I'm not a Kansas City fan, but if they came out and did it one more time, I'd be all right with that, especially as Chicago's getting their bearings together. But
Mahomes has a lot of career left, so even if the Mahomes Kelsey thing is coming to an end, they're certainly going to reinvent themselves.
They're a mid-major making it work in the biggest league in the world. So I'm just enjoying it, and so I'd like to see him do it again. Yeah, if the Bears can't get there, if they play the Bears, of course, I want them to lose 158-0. But if the Bears aren't in the Super Bowl, then I wouldn't mind seeing them win one more time. You got me.
All right. And with that, I want to thank everyone that stuck around to the end of this episode. Please make sure to hit that subscribe, follow button so that when our NFC Roundup episode is released. And until next time, try to avoid making another bad call.